Hey everybody, how's it? Aloha. Well, this is going to be my second video in my new series called Why This Song Might Make Your Face Melt. And today I'm going to be doing KASHMIR from Led Zeppelin. I don't think there hasn't been one person in the world that at one time in their life, even if they didn't hear the whole song, are familiar with at least the first 32 bars of this song. And it's also been kind of a influence to many other songs, So nonetheless, what this is being that I already know the song and everything, I'm still going to present it on my kind of my Mr. Rogers kind of vibe as being the old composer, the decomposer. Really bring forth some nuances and stuff for the listener that knows nothing about music and wonders why it melts their face. But in this series, I do get a little deeper into the musicality of it, a la kind of light-loaded theory, if you would. So anyhow, so let me get my ducks in a row. Thank you guys so much for the comments. Got plenty of videos coming. Thank you guys for tipping me for a cup of coffee. I've got that little thing below with the links. Also, of course, a video link just for this song will be below. There'll be a link below for Zeppelin CDs and DVDs and concerts. That'll be below as well. I support all of that. And then these headsets, a lot of people still ask me about them. These are AKG 240s, and they've been around forever in the industry, at least in the 70s when I started. And very durable, very cool. And that link will be down there too. All right. So let's do this. Just want to let you know, if you've never come by my videos before, I do stop periodically to actually bring up, these points. In this case, this song is 8 minutes long. I'm going to do my stops in the first 4.5 minutes and then let the rest go, because the actual phrase of the song within itself actually duplicates itself structurally. And even though there are a few nuances at the end, we just listen to it through. Okay? So here it is. Why does this song make your face melt? KASHMIR, Led Zeppelin. Here we go. All right, first stop. The setup for this song is what hooks us into what I would call kind of a sonic trance, how we get locked into this. Obviously, the first thing that really stands out is the rhythmical arrangement of this song. So what you have is you have the drummer, John Bonham, holding down a really hard 4/4. But the arrangements of the strings and guitar are written in a 3/4. Now, what's really odd about that is I was doing a little homework and I was looking up, sheet music on string arrangements for KASHMIR. And the funny thing is, and this plays into something else I'm going to bring up in a video in about a week, is that some of it is written in 3/4, like the sheet music for it, and then some other composers decided to write it in 4/4, using a different method of using the notes and the phrasing of the measures. And so, tomato, tomato, that's a big discussion, I'm sure, for all the scholars. So we talk about that. What happens is you've got this 4/4 with a 3/4. This 3/4 kind of arrangement actually resolves or relocks in after 12 bars. Kind of feels like it's catching up, and it's kind of this thing. Now, talk about this feeling. The 3/4, that da-da-da, 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 is kind of what we call a waltz. 3/4 is generally that kind of waltz feeling, and that's really super cool. Now, for you Tool folks here, Jimmy Page's guitar tuning is what we call dadgad, D-A-D-G-A-D. This is an open, beautiful D chord per se. So if you strum the guitar with all just the open strings without making a chord, there's this beautiful ringing out D, but with very unique voicings. So that D repeats itself in two octaves, a low D to the mid D to the high D. And so you have this beautiful, already wide open sound. So when he's doing his chromatic modulations, haha, for you guys over there, chromatic modulation means he's just going up in half steps. Da 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 da, you know, chromatically going up. And he's only on a couple of strings here, but he can play the other strings wide open. It gives you that beautiful escorting sound of the D chord. And of course, you know, a lot of you Tool Army folks know that a lot of Tool is written in D. Now, depending on how you look at it, because I know if you go deeper, for those of you who are like, wow, D is like a third chakra and it's sacral and it's very sexual and, you know, very sensual. Well, actually, it plays into this song being the same way. So, well, you know the old saying, it's not the size of the D that counts, it's how you use it. Anyhow, let's go on. Oh, I'm sorry, I did say that, okay? I just took the air out of my integrity right there, didn't I? Here comes the comments. All right, here we go. Let's continue on. I'll go back a little bit. All right. Okay, I know we're getting into this part here, but I wanted to get back into these other sections here. So when we got back into the second verse, if you would, then Paul Jones with his arrangements with strings. So there's strings, and he's playing a darker synth pad that occasionally he'll hold down an octave. And it kind of sounds a little kind of like a horn, like a little bit of a brass rip that has a little resolve to it. But that's hidden back in there. But I wanted to bring something to attention to you, is that in the section where it goes da 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 da. Okay, so that is a reversal of the chromatic order from the very beginning, right? Da 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 da. But what a lot of people don't hear is that the da 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 is still at the bottom. You have to listen really closely. but the rhythm pattern that was set up in the front is still at the bottom. And a couple times there's these kind of colliding notes that add a slight dissonance to it. You really have to hear it. You really have to put your head into the mix on this, because they repeat that upward chromatic while this is coming down this way. And right around here, there's a little, like, you know, it works. It completely works. And it's part of the beauty of the journey that they're taking you on with this. Robert Plant's melody, these beautiful intervals that are very, very much like you can imagine yourself on a magic carpet ride. The essence of the song, you know, they say that an influence of it was they were in Morocco or something of that nature. So there is a Middle Eastern or an Eastern, I want to say Eastern influence in these arrangements. The other thing I want to say is the part where it all just kind of squared off. That is a straight 4/4, and it's like, you know how I am, a cleansing of the rhythmical palette. It kind of sets you into a nice groove and a lot of space in there. Okay, they left a lot of space in there so that John Bonham, whatever he decides to do, that it just powers through. There's just a lot of space in there until Robert Plant comes in with these long, wafty, really beautiful, killer notes out there. Just the tone of his voice is just, it's Robert Plant. That's, you know, a million people could sing those notes, but the way he sings it is what makes Zeppelin, along with the rest of the musicians. So I just wanted to bring that into pass. Now we're obviously going to go into that really big section here. I'm going to skip back. I apologize for that if you were a little kind of like, oh man, no, why did you stop there, dude? So let's keep moving forward. Wait, stop. That there is a little different than the first half of the unison. Da, 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 da. That's where that other pattern was going. Here, they did that downward chromatic thing all in unison. Bass and everything went down, and guitar. So that other pattern that I told you was repeating is not there at that section. So this is how, with their arrangement, their decision is to say, well, let's not do it all the time. Let's go ahead and make it more powerful by making that downward chromatic run all in unison. So I'm sorry about that. I'll take it back. I'll shut up. I promise.
The sun burns the ground, and my eyes fill with sand as I scan this wasted land.
This is the last stop of the song, because after this we're just going to run it through, and then if you remember some of the things I said, you can listen to it. Okay, this section here was this passage in the journey was probably the most memorable one for me as a kid when I first heard it. Now, I was lucky enough to be alive when the album first dropped, so my memory triggers of me doing whatever I was doing before I listened to the song with my buddies and we put the needle on brings me back to a certain place. But I want to just say something about John Paul Jones. I'm sure that a lot of you know this who are in the music industry and musicians, but for those who are just the listener, the bass player John Paul Jones is probably one of the most prolific arrangers of the rock era, even to this day, I would put him up there with his capabilities. When you are an arranger and a composer such as that of John Paul Jones, it doesn't just disappear because you're in a generation, so you can continue to be that individual. His bass arrangements, he plays the bass, the keys, and he did the string arrangements on this, okay? If you listen to these string arrangements, in this section here, there's 2 chords. I think it sounded like a G minor to A, if I was correct. But I want you to listen when we go back. We're going to go back to this section, and then I'm going to let it fly all the way out. Listen to the answer and the call and answer, or question and answer of his string arrangements. While we have this 4/4 going down here, and this is locking up over here, and Robert Plant is singing these beautiful, huge, whimsical notes, just killing it with his melody. What you're having is on this side here in the violins, you have one phrase happening here while the cellos are holding. While this phrase is just about done, the cellos answer back in a completely different melody. So this is called Counterpoint, where you can actually have multiple arrangements happening. Obviously, if they're all in the same key or the mode or the scale. If it's not, it sounds like crap. And it's such an important, powerful part of the song, because this is that, like, we're at now at the top of, like, flying over the clouds, and the way my theater of the mind of, like, this is where we're flying over the clouds. Now it's just like you put it on autopilot and you're up here with the clouds. The rest of the song is going to go and go and go and go and go and go. I thought that was so important. So I'm going to take you back to that passage, and then we're going to go all the way out. I'm not going to say anything else so we can enjoy the song together. But that was such an important part of it. I mean, there's Zeppelin is Zeppelin is Zeppelin. 4 individuals that made a sound that really, there it is, the start of metal, rock, depending on your opinion as well. And they on themselves as artists made the sounds, much like Tool, much like Meshuggah, much like all the other bands that I've been doing here. It's the coming together of 4 musicians and constructing a piece of artwork, and this is a piece of artwork. So I'm going to take us back to that phrase and then just let it run, okay? So here we go. So this might take a second for me to find it, so stand by.
All I see turns to brown as the sun burns the ground. And my eyes filled with sand as I scan this wasted land. Trace, like thoughts inside a dream, with the path that led me to that place, yellow desert screen, my Shangri-La beneath the summer moon, I will return again, and the dust that floats high into when moving through KASHMIR.
Wow. You know, what a purposeful, incredible way to end the track on this phrase. A couple things I wanted to bring out is that obviously John Paul Jones and the gang changed up the arrangement of this phrase. It's a repeated phrase, right? So the phrase we already heard earlier, I commented on. So instead of that, like, really super call, question, answer, string arrangements in the first part of that original phrase, this time around, he decided to go just more bolder, more longer notes, bad grammar, and decided that at this point now that you as perhaps the listener, but them as the artists, how they felt when they wrote it perhaps was, we're so far up there now, this is the only way to let this continue on. It's just, let's go ahead and let's just run with this and let it end and let it fly and then fade. Remember the days of fading? Another thing is that, you know, John Paul Jones did play keys on this. So there's a couple kind of like, I had mentioned earlier, these octaves that he's playing that has a little resonance. It kind of sounded like a little bit of like a trombone rip that was resolved a little bit. But then at the second half of that last phrasing we heard, there was a little bit more use of that in unison with the strings. Let's talk really quick about engineering. The decisions, in my opinion, as an engineer, because this is a very full and fluid piece of music, I think the one thing that I just really keyed in on is how they spent the kind of time they did on John Bonham's kit, in the sense that if you notice John Bonham's kit and also Plant's voice, they really kind of pushed what they could with the reverb. So Plant's voice had a nice, maybe a cathedral or a hall, or maybe, you know, there wasn't a lot of trickery in reverbs then as there are now with all the plugins and things you can do. Nice long on Robert Plant's voice to give you that glide. It's that long haul glide, because I believe that the song, as it affected me, is that ride into some glorious abyss, kind of, like I said, an Eastern kind of carpet ride kind of vibe. With John Bonham's kit, you can't push that reverb too much, or it's going to muddy and mucky everything up, but they have just enough on it. Even on the kick, there's like a, I don't know if maybe they really pushed up the room tones. I heard that really the beginning of this song was John was just in love where the kit was set up in Headley Grange, and he just started playing just because he was so loved the reverb, and then, you know, Page comes in and does the riff, and that's how the song began, according to the story, according to folklore. Another thing is at the very end, and a lot of times for you who don't know anything about music, and you hear when Bonham's doing, you know, his snare runs, and you heard this kind of sound to it. That's called a flange. So it would seem to make sense that at a certain point the engineer decided to kick in just a little effects in certain places to give you that kind of flangey feeling that the drums had on the way out of that, in that phrasing. So yeah, KASHMIR, Led Zeppelin, a huge chunk of my life soundtrack, and I'm sure somewhere in your world, if you're still here watching this, you can go back to the very first time you heard it. It could have been a date. It could have been the first time, you know, knock one out. It could, whatever. First time you got baked, the first time you ate a bowl of Cheerios. I don't know. But this is that kind of song. And so hopefully this doesn't get blocked. I've heard there's some rumors that there's a lot of blocking going on, like what just happened to me with King Crimson. Ugh, I'll do another video about that later. Anyhow, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out. The links to Led Zeppelin music is down there. The links to the headsets down there. The little link if you want to buy me a cup of coffee is down there, and also where that money kind of really goes to, as well as what I do for kids in hospitals and stuff. Thank you guys very much for hanging out, and yeah, I got a lot of stuff coming, man. Got a lot of fun stuff coming. All right, aloha.